Hello everyone, I am the Man Kirby. Welcome to my channel, The Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series of this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of The Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on a commander from the Bloomburrow Precon's Bello Bard of the Brambles. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel at no extra cost to you. But the very best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. There are plenty of perks for being a patron, such as early access to certain videos, exclusive deck techs, gifts, and more for as little as $1. You could also become a channel member for just 99 cents. Show off your support with a logo next to your name and exclusive emojis. Or you can always just support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You could join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Bello is a 3/3 raccoon bard with 1 generic, 1 red, and 1 green. During your turn, he animates your non-R enchantments and non-equipment artifacts into 4/4 elementals with indestructible and haste that draw you cards whenever they hit an opponent. This ability is on the creature, so if you hit your opponents with 10 creatures, you'll draw 10 cards. This ability is amazing, so it's only natural to have 2 downsides. The first one is that this is only during your turn, so an opponent can still blow up your enchantments and artifacts during their turn. The second one is that it's only for set permanents with mana value 4 or greater. That isn't such a big drawback since some of the best cards for this deck have that mana value anyways. That being said, this commander provides card advantage on top of a massively aggressive boon. Speaking of boons, let's see how we're going to make our 4 CMC and higher artifacts and enchantments even beefier. To that end, the deck is running Gruul War Chant, Gruul War Plow, Nylea's Forerunner, Sight of the Scale Lords, Street Ride, and Akroma's Memorial. Most of these provide the ever-important trample keyword to ensure we get through with combat damage. Something to consider with enchantment creatures is that Bello is only restricted to non-aura enchantments, so something like Nylea's Forerunner here will be a 4/4 as well, and it will also have haste and indestructibility. Gimli's Reckless Might is included for similar nonsense, only that this capitalized a bit differently. Since our 4/4 elementals will have indestructibility, we can swing in with Total Abandon, so we can use them to fight another creature and potentially kill them that way. Kessig Wolf Run, Skarg the Rage Pits, and Rogue's Passage are included to continue ensuring our creatures get through. Since these are lands that enter untapped and provide mana, they don't take up a slot in the deck. In fact, them providing colorless mana is going to matter for something we're going to see further along in the video. Apart from these boons, we can also make our creatures more dangerous with Gratuitous Violence and Uncivil Unrest. These make it so our creatures deal double damage. Uncivil Unrest is actually pretty busted here due to how state-based actions work. Since Bello has a static ability, any artifact or enchantment that matters will enter and trigger Uncivil Unrest because it will be considered a 4/4 elemental for when its trigger checks whether a creature entered or not. Since they already have haste, give them the +1/+1 counter in order to become bigger and deal double damage. Unnatural Growth and Rage Reflection also help with sort of doubling damage. The first one doubles power and toughness each combat, don't forget about that. It works on opponents' turns too. And the second one gives our creatures double strike. Fiery Emancipation and City on Fire are even more hardcore, tripling the damage instead. Just imagine dropping any of these damage multiplication effects while you control Bello. They'll enter and will have haste, indestructibility, and will be a 4/4 at minimum. Then you can swing in with your indestructible army of enchanted artifacts and enchantments. If that's not enough to convince you, what if you had infinite combat steps? There's no bigger multiplication factor than infinity, right? Aggravated Assault and Nature's Will help with just that. While the first one won't be indestructible during your turn, that's a fine enough compromise for ending the game. The way this works with Nature's Will untapping all of your lands whenever you deal combat damage to a player. If you're able to generate 5 mana each combat, you can then activate Aggravated Assault and do it all over again. So long as at least one creature gets through, you're set since they're indestructible. As amazing as Bello is in terms of being card advantage in the command zone, we can even add more cards. That's right, green draws cards almost better than blue at times because the color pie is only a suggestion for green and not a prison like it is for white. But I digress. In any case, the deck is running Elemental Bond, Garruk's Uprising, Outcaster Trailblazer, and Garruk's Pathleader. As previously explained with state-based actions and Uncivil Unrest, these will all trigger whenever a permanent animated by Bello enters the battlefield under our control, since it will be a 4/4 elemental when the trigger is checked. While these things are amazing, the deck is also running Guardian Project and the Great Henge. These will trigger regardless of what kind of creature enters so long as it isn't a token. As a bonus, these will also become 4/4 elementals thanks to Bello. The Great Henge also functions as a mana rock, and since it'll have haste, you will be able to tap it for mana the turn it enters play. Granted, it still has a steep cost on the secondary market as of the making of this video, so feel free to swap it out if you're building this deck and don't have it. Glorious Sunrise and the Immortal Sun also draws cards, but only once due to their triggered effect. That being said, they're included because they have multiple uses in the deck. The enchantment also gives our creatures trample, so it's yet another effect like that in the deck. It also gives us 3 green mana in a pinch, which might matter for something like Aggravated Assault. The artifact also pumps our creatures and reduces the generic cost of all of our spells. As a bonus, it also nerfs Planeswalkers, of which this deck is running 0 of. There are other cost reduction effects in the deck, but we'll see those later on. Mind's Eye also draws us cards, but we have to pay 1 generic whenever an opponent does so. Fortunately, we can also attack with it since it has a mana value of 5. Enchantress's Presence and Eidolon of Blossoms also draws cards on triggers, but tied to enchantments. The deck is running 20 enchantments, so these will trigger more often than not. Also, keep in mind that the Eidolon will also be a hasty indestructible 4/4 during our turn. Toski Bearer of Secrets and Oran Frostfang provide card advantage similarly to Bello, but they don't care what creatures deal in combat damage. The Frostfang giving our attackers Death Touch is a huge bonus if they also had Trample, since we only need 1 damage to be lethal, sending the rest as excess damage. If they also had First Strike or Double Strike, we could attack with all of our creatures too, regardless of indestructibility. Valakut Awakening and Shamanic Revelation also provide card advantage with a bit of synergy involved. Valakut doesn't take up a slot if you play it as a land when you need it. As a bonus, Shamanic Revelation can gain us a ton of life, which is an amazing buffer for aggressive decks like this one. We can be more risky with attacks if we have a high life count. Reliquary Tower, Thought Vessel, and Decanter of Endless Water are 3 cards I tend to run in decks that draw a lot of cards, and this one is no exception. Once this thing gets going, it's very difficult to stop. You will have a fat hand, so keep it fat with these. Since the deck is a bit higher on the mana curve due to Bello's ability, we need even more ramp effects than usual, which is fine for a green deck like this one. It's running Farseek, Nature's Lore, 3 Visits, Into the North, Rampant Growth, Cultivate, and Kodama's Reach, which are pretty much expected. Not only do these help lower the curve, but they also provide land-based mana acceleration, which is the best kind in this format that frowns upon mass land destruction. Omen Path Journey is also included because it's fortunately indestructible during our turn. I don't like these kind of effects because 1 well-timed piece of removal and you just lost those lands from your library. However, what has worked for me was choosing any 5 of the 7 fetch lands remaining in the library when this enters. These are used to thin the deck of lands anyways. So if an opponent manages to get rid of it, no real harm is done besides maybe set us back. If they don't, then we'll still get that extra land at the end of our turn. Oh, and it'll also be a hasty indestructible 4/4 during our turn too. Mana Reflection and Nyxbloom Ancient are obviously included. These might seem like win more effects if we're doubling and tripling our mana, hextupling if they're both in play. But thanks to their mana value, they're indestructible beaters during our turn. Getting any of these out relatively early enough and we can really get going. Same with Stone Calendar and Mana Matrix. These ancient artifacts will be hasty indestructible beaters during our turn. However, they'll also reduce the generic cost of our spells too, with the calendar reducing all of our spells by 1, and the matrix reducing only our instants and enchantments. But that's fine because the deck has 20 enchantments and 9 instants that make the most of it. That being said, it's currently a bit pricey on the secondary market. Fortunately, the deck doesn't need it to function, so you can opt out of it if you wanted to. The deck also makes the most of interaction thanks to Bello's ability. Behold, the most evil card you can include in your Bello deck, Naviniral's Disc. Notice how it's worded. You pay 1 and tap it to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Normally, this would blow itself up, but if it's indestructible, it sticks around. So long as you activate it during your turn while you control Bello, you'll potentially blow up the board. You will inevitably blow up Bello, so be careful. That being said, Asceticism is included to help protect our board. Not only will it also be indestructible during our turn, but it gives our creatures hexproof. We can also activate it to regenerate any creature, which is amazing for saving Bello after activating the disc. We can also protect Bello with Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots, Whisper Silk Cloak, Mithril Cloak, Hammer of Nazan, and Shield of Kaldra. So don't worry, the deck is still running non-synergistic protective effects. The deck can still somewhat function without the commander, but he's needed for the deck to perform optimally. Fortunately, he's a 3 CMC commander with access to green. Speaking of, Tamiyo Safekeeping, Tavar Stand, and Deflecting Swat are also included, since these aren't as telegraphed as having him equipped with any of the previously shown equipment. Make sure to keep that soul green mana open. Fortunately, the swap will be free. Heroic Intervention is also included to route out those protective effects. This one's obviously better since it protects your entire board. Balaget Recovery is included to recover any of them during our turn, all without taking up a slot in the deck, so long as you use it as a land when you need to. We can also protect our board with Tybalt's Trickery and Warping Wheel in a pinch. You will be surprised how many people forget that non-blue decks have the potential of running counter magic. Warping Wheel is why it's fine if the deck is running lands that tap for colorless mana. In fact, it's encouraged. That being said, we can also counter a spell that needs countering. As for the rest of the interaction, the deck is running Beast Within and Chaos Warp for single target removal, Guthrie Wright's History and Decimate for multi-single target removal, Blasphemous Act and Overloading Vandal Blast for board wipes. Bridgeworks Battle is included because it doesn't take up a slot and can very easily kill an opposing creature if we fight with an indestructible one. Just remember to use it as a land when needed. Blasphemous Act is especially brutal here if we manage to have a ton of indestructible artifacts and enchantments in play. Keeping Bello around afterwards is even more brutal. Hopefully your whole board has protection from red thanks to a Criminal's Memorial. The rest of the deck is just the rest of the lands. The deck's running Cinder Glade, Commercial District, Highland Forest, Sheltered Thicket, Stomping Ground, Highland Weald, Rockfall Vale, Rootbound Crag, Spire Garden, Command Tower, and Ancient Tomb, as well as Yamavaya Cradle of Growth for color fixing, along with 4 of each snow-covered basic lands for all the land-based ramp effects in the deck, and into the north. As with all of my deck techs, you can build your mana base according to your budget. Whether you include more expensive cards or even cheaper cards is up to you. You do you. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Bello, Bard of the Brambles. Interestingly, he reminds me of Zinnia in that you can essentially build him however you want, since there's no shortage of non-aura enchantments and non-equipment artifacts that have a mana value of 4 or higher. I went with the route that was more aggressive and efficient at getting those creatures through, but you can go with a totally different route and also have an amazing deck with it. Your imagination is the limit to how you build it. That being said, let me know how you would build it in the comments. And if you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link. That also helps out the channel. I also want to thank any channel members. Your membership is greatly appreciated. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I am the Mad Kirby, and happy brewing.